All right, Tara back here, and I am speaking with Janet Gray again today. Janet Gray is a financial planner, and she previously spoke to us about the benefits for everyone during COVID. And today we are talking about managing your finances during COVID. So we're getting a bit more personal with people's finances. And just we're going to go through this list of talking points. And if I have any questions, then I'll shoot them out to you and we'll take it from there.
You bet.
All right.
So
go ahead.
Well, the first one I say, and maybe even the most important one, is to ask for help. I mean, first of all, you need to acknowledge you need help, and then you need to ask for it. And there's a lot of people out there wanting to offer help, either through your bank or through your institutions, through the government in terms of benefits. But you need to ask for help, and then purposely do explore your options with them. So don't be afraid to ask. We're all in this together, as they say. And please, reach out and don't try and figure this out on yourself. This is uncharted territory. Reach out to those experts and ask them to help you.
Yeah. And I find that's really hard for a lot of people to do, because finances is a very personal subject.
Yep.
And so asking for help is very difficult for a lot of people. But I think what needs to be put out there is this as what you do day in and day out. So there's nothing that's going to surprise you about people's finances, no matter how, positive or negative they feel about it. And I think that that's really important for people to know that there's no judgment when it comes to presenting finances.
Well, and I think under our own personal bubbles, right? We all think that this is the worst. I'm terrible at this. I'm that you're really self-judgmental. But when you talk to a professional, trust me, seen it all, seen worse.
Yeah.
So we're more in tune with let's try and fix this for you than we are trying to talk about what a bad person you are. Like, it's not about that at all. It's what can we do using our expertise to help you into a better situation.
Yeah. And so the next one is don't panic.
Yeah, I mean, there is a tendency to panic because we're all feeling stressed and worried, but I mean, this is a short-term interruption. Now, it's not a day short-term, it's potentially a few months short-term, but in the life of your income and the life of your finances and everything, it is kind of a blip. And it's a hard blip, and it's a difficult blip. It's a very uncomfortable period, but don't panic, because we will get through this. And the government, I think, and I'm not a political expert, is doing a good job at making sure we have money to continue our lifestyles to the basic extent, at least. Trying to keep some businesses in play, and some programs that'll be coming afterwards. So don't panic. Ask for help. Back to the first one.
Yeah, that's what I was just going to say, circling back. So as a financial planner, so let's say, for a lot of people, their financial circumstances are looking very different today than they were a month ago, 2 months ago. And are people able to, get your help in just planning for this period, like coming up with sort of an action plan to get through this and beyond? Is that something that you can help with?
Sure, absolutely. As I mentioned in the previous clip, that I'm happy to speak to people. I'm setting aside 15-minute slots for people to contact me, so I can either speak to them on the phone or I can answer their question in an email. And I've had people follow up on that, so I'm happy to do that. It's really just the long and short of it is, live for today, like manage your short-term expenses, and then catch up with the long-term later, which is why they're allowing credit card deferrals, mortgage deferrals. They're kind of pushing off some of that, so you have enough money to live in the now. And of course, that will reduce some of your anxiety too. And if you can manage the now, then the later, will work out as well once things are normalized.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, and so then the next one is credit.
Yeah, you really want to try and minimize the amount of credit you're using right now, because the tendency is, okay, well, just because I don't have cash doesn't mean I can't go out and buy what I want to do, or spend money in ways that aren't really needed. their wants. And of course, during this time, we want things that make us feel good and comfortable and all that too. But don't go out and buy the big 85-inch TV right now.
Right.
Try and minimize your use of credit, because we don't know what this is going to look like in the future. There's going to be some adjustments by all of us, and maybe you want to minimize, what the credit implications might be. So I would say try and minimize it's not don't use your credit, it's just try and minimize the use of your credit.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I can also see that too, right? People feeling, the online shopping, all of that kind of stuff,
Sure.
sitting at home. So I can see how that could definitely run some people into some difficult situations in the long run.
Well, and that's
Um,
that's kind of what that's kind of where we get our feel good moments, right? Is often, I deserve this,
yeah.
so I'm going to purchase this. But, the offset of that is, yes, maybe you deserve it in the moment and you have this temporary, yay and happiness, but then it may cause you more stress down the road. So if you can try and manage that a little tighter,
Yeah.
then, then you won't have to deal with the push. You're just kind of kicking the anxiety down the road a little bit too.
Yeah. Yeah. That's true. Okay. And so reduce debt.
Yeah, so I mean that's a much longer term, right? Because right now, I mean, maybe we're not making payments on our debt, but the longer term wake up call, which is maybe what this whole virus has brought to us, is kind of try not to carry too much debt, because this hasn't happened before. But not to say that another situation similar to this, maybe not a virus induced one, but it could happen that job loss, illness in the family, any of those things could throw your income into a chaos, which may not allow you to pay your debt, which of course causes more debt. So
Right.
the idea with debt is, if you can reduce it from the start, like try not to create new debt, and then when you do have it, try and pay it off as quickly as you can, so that you don't have that hanging over your head. And debt is, again, you were talking about kicking that can down the road. Debt is very much often current pleasure, current spending, and all you're doing is kind of using today's dollars or tomorrow's dollars today,
Yeah.
right? Because you're borrowing it and you're going to pay it back tomorrow, but it's not really your money. It's someone else's money, because you're borrowing it and you pay interest on it.
Right.
So if you can avoid that as much as possible, and maybe not now is the best time to start doing that, but if you can minimize debt and then always reduce debt going forward, I think you'll be in a much happier headspace around money.
Yeah. Yeah. This is a good one. Needs versus wants, because I know that right now, even for me personally, getting in that trap of like, do I need this or do I want this? Because it's very easy for us to convince ourselves that we absolutely
Yeah.
need whatever this is
Hmm.
right now.
Yeah. Oh, we can rationalize anything. That's just the human
Yeah.
brain, right?
Yeah.
But it's very much about, the government's giving you $2,000 and it's not wanting to, encourage you to go, I don't know, what would you do? Go out well, you can't go out for a meal. What can you do with $2,000? Spend it online, right? They don't want you
Yeah.
to spend it online. They want you to pay your bills. They want you to pay your rent, put food on the table, maybe pay some crucial utilities, keep your insurance payments, things like that going. So now is not the time to pay for your wants. It's time to really focus on, what is it I need: roof, food, um, you know, medicine, those kind of
Yeah.
things. The needs can wait until the income is stabilized again, and this works out. So really focus on, you're right. Do I need this, or is this just a want?
Yeah.
And then, sometimes you're giving up, okay, I can want it, but that means that, we're having crackers for dinner. So
Yeah.
just, make sure you're very aware of how you're spending your money. And it's always kind of like, ask yourself that question when you're reaching for, the remote or your mouse to click on something. Just say, do I really want that, or is it a need? Sorry, the
Yeah.
other way around. Do I really need it, or is it a want? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense. Um, so also, no large purchases.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. And that kind of goes back to the use of credit, that you would, if you were making a large purchase now, you're likely putting it on credit, and you may not have the income available to pay it back. So you may have some late payment charges, you may have to skip payments, you may have some, so it's not a good time to be putting large purchases on your credit card.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. This one here, So start an emergency fund now. So I know that a lot of people are struggling right now because they either didn't have an emergency fund to begin with,
Mm-hmm.
or they were living beyond their means already,
Yep.
or debt was already, an issue. So starting an emergency fund now,
Mm-hmm.
is that something that people are actually able to do, or?
Well, it's kind of a state of mind, I think. So if you um, want to start an emergency fund, I'm not saying you're going to put thousands of dollars into the emergency fund, but you dug down in the couch and you found a toonie, start your emergency fund. If
Right.
you can, sell something on Kijiji while maybe you've got some time to do that, maybe that goes into your emergency fund. And just say, okay, you know what? I think in the first month, if I can put $20 into emergency fund, that's good. So it's
Yeah.
more about preparing a habit and an ongoing thing than it is trying to, the calculations tell me that I should have $30,000 in my emergency fund. Well, that's just like, that's never going to
Yeah.
happen if you go at it. The elephant is too big. But if
Yeah.
you can say, I'd be happy to get 20 bucks in there this month, in even in light of all the chaos that we're in, if you can find $20 around the house by cashing in some kids' toys on eBay
Yeah.
or Kijiji or whatever, that's the starting point. So it's more about creating the frame of mind that, okay, now that, 6 weeks into this, we can appreciate that maybe we should have had some emergency money set aside. So let's start small, but let's be consistent going forward with that.
Yeah. And I think that's a really good point. A lot of people think like, oh, start an emergency fund right now. Like, I can barely make ends meet or whatever. But like you said, it's about starting the habit and starting to shift the mindset around the emergency
Yep.
fund and around,
Yep.
taking those practices, so it's even like, forfeiting your cup of coffee
Hmm.
for, once a week to put that aside, and
Yep.
doing those kinds of practices so that when money does return to a more stable state, or, you
Hmm.
get your job back or whatever the case might be, then those habits are instilled to
Yep.
then, grow from there.
Well, it's also to appreciate that small steps make a difference, right?
Oh,
So
huge.
even
Yeah.
if you only have a toonie in your emergency fund, you know what? That's $2 more than a lot of people have in theirs.
Yeah.
So there's kind of that, right? It's baby steps, and you just maybe it's just set the intention, but continue forward with it.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. Okay. And so review your investments is the next one on the list.
Yeah, so if your stomach is going flip flop because the markets went down and your investments went down, and if you're just like totally bummed out by that, then maybe you need to go back and look at your investment, your allocation. Like maybe you actually had too much volatility in it for your risk anyway.
Mm,
So a lot of people, when times are good, people want to be where the money is, right? So
yeah.
even if they were conservative, they say, yeah, but over here I can make a little bit more. So and it looks really good. It looks really good. So I'm going to continue, moving over there. And then when it goes bad, they're like, oh, I never should have been there. Well, that's the warning sign that you shouldn't have been there in the first place. You need a
Right.
smoother ride. You don't need the up and down. You need the smooth. So it's a good
Right.
time to review your investments. Don't focus so much on the number, because the number is going to change. It's already changed from when you probably got your last statement. So
Yeah.
just focus on how did you feel when you looked at that down, and then have conversations with your advisors and your investment people about what can I do to kind of not um, you know make any missteps now that the markets are down. I don't want to lose anything, but maybe I don't want to be in as volatile a situation as that when the markets come back. So it's
Yeah.
a good
That makes
time to
sense.
review, not to physically move the money around, but to just at least be aware of how did it make you feel? Is it meeting your goals? And speak to your advisor about it.
Yeah. That's good. Okay. And put non-essential bills on hold and speaking to creditors. So what does that mean? And like, what are some steps that you can take to do that?
Yeah. So again, that goes back to step number one, ask for help, right? So if you're owing a bill, maybe it's your cell phone bill, call your cell phone provider and say, look, I can only give you 20 bucks this month. I know
Hmm.
my bill's 150, but I can only give you 20. I'll catch up later. But you need to communicate with these creditors because they're expecting you to pay your bill. And if you don't tell them otherwise, then they're thinking that you're just, either forgetting or forfeiting or whatever. And it looks really badly when you're trying to negotiate with them. So call them and
Right.
say, I'm having difficulty. I'm willing to give you $20. I can afford to give you 20, just for good faith, really. And I'll make up the rest later. So talk to your advisors or your credit card people. What was the other part about that? Yeah, non-essentials. So there may be some non-essentials where, I don't know, maybe you borrowed money from grandma and, grandma, can you wait, grandma? Like, I'll pay you
Yeah.
back. I just can't pay you now. So make sure your channels of communication are open so
Yeah.
that people at the other end know what to expect. And I know it's probably, again, human tendency to kind of clam up about it and
Yeah.
just keep it in and not share it. And because, there's pride and there's embarrassment and all of that too. But until you tell the other party, here's this, and you don't need to go into a lot of detail. I'm only able to pay you this much. I will make the payments later, but I just wanted to let you know that this is all you can expect. So don't ignore, because that's not good on your credit scores and your credit reports, but still communicate with them as to what your intentions are, so they'll know that they've been in contact with you. They can check it off on their box at their end, and everything's much happier.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I can see how the tendency would be to, let the bill pile up still in the envelope, or, ignore it in your email when it comes in,
Yeah.
knowing that you're going to have difficulty to pay it. But what I'm basically getting from you is to be a little bit more open about finances, whether that's reaching out for help or negotiating with, with your non-essential bills or just your regular bills and creditors and all of that kind of stuff, is having kind of a bit more open mind when it comes to finances, because there are things that you can do and there are changes that can be made, even given what is going on with COVID-19 right now.
Absolutely. And I think this kind of, if it illustrates nothing, it shows that, like, we're all having the same issues.
Yeah.
We're all having loss of income. We're all having bills piling up. I mean, we're all together. So, it's not like you're phoning your lender or your bank or something and saying, I'm the only one out there with this problem. Everyone's got the same
Yeah.
problem. So if nothing, it's good practice
Yeah.
that you can tell them the same thing they're hearing. So if you thought there was going to be judgment, well, there's even less judgment now, because everybody's in the same boat.
Yeah, everyone's in the same boat to some extent, right? We're all
Yeah.
being affected in some way. And I think that that's really
Absolutely.
important to know, is that we're all in the boat together at this
Yeah.
current time. So, right now is, a pretty good time to deal with some of this stuff if you've been putting it off for
Yeah.
however long.
Well,
Um,
that's why I've said, they're good steps to take, to at least consider them. Some of them make sense to put in place now. Some of them make sense to just start slowly as you go forward, and then some of them you can still continue even past the COVID crisis. So it's just good to adjust your thinking, look for more information, talk to people. If you have the time right now to do that, do some research, read some
yeah,
books, and just educate yourself a little bit more on some money spending habits that you can improve as you go forward, so that this crisis, if it happens again in some form, isn't going to be as hard hitting as it is right now.
yeah, I agree. And I think that circles back again to the ask for help, because I feel like, a lot of people's mindsets sometimes are, well, I already can't make ends meet. How am I supposed to pay somebody to help me? But,
Yeah.
I know in my perspective is, if I'm not good at something, then, reaching for a professional who is obviously more educated or has more skill sets in that area to assist me, right? Because then you're just
Sure.
running the hamster wheel and getting even further and further
Yeah.
and further behind, trying to do it all yourself, when having somebody who can assist you in planning, or, even speaking of like the emergency fund or all of that kind of stuff, who can help you to strategize and come up with action plans, is
Yeah.
a lot more
Yeah.
effective than months and months of trying to figure it out on your own sometimes. Well,
Yeah.
most of
Very much.
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you can certainly, you can buy books, you can watch YouTube videos and everything, but they're so generalized that
Yeah.
you're thinking, oh my God, all of that applies to me. Whereas someone can look at your situation, a professional can look at it and say, no, 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 you don't need that. You don't need that. Here's what you need. So they can really cut to the chase much faster and have more individualized solutions for you than you thinking, I've got to do 100 things when in reality you only need 30 things.
Yeah. Yeah. And that makes sense too, right? Is what's going to be most effective right now.
Yep.
I think is really important. Okay, so I think that was really helpful. Do you want to just remind everyone how they
Good.
can get a hold of you, and what the best way to reach you is in case, they are looking to reach out for any type of assistance?
Sure, yeah. The best way is probably by email. I know it seems kind of old-fashioned, but email. So it's Janet, Janet, at moneycoachescanada.ca. Um, and that's, we can set up a time to chat by phone or versus email or whatever, but I'm happy to talk and answer questions if I can and direct people to the right resources.
Perfect. All right, Janet, thank you so much for doing this with me again, and I am
Thank
sure
you.
we will chat soon.
Absolutely.